Following on from my last video where I added 10 yards of carry with a 7-iron in just 10 shots, which if you haven't watched already, make sure you do here, I'm going to go into a more of a biomechanical detailed breakdown of what I changed from a ground reaction force perspective and how it might help your game. So in essence, from just purely a feel perspective, I focused on this drill where I had to feel like I got my pressure moving into my lead side earlier and was able to then push more vertically to help get more compression on the ball and more ball speed, which then would look like this, which now feels super easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record another swing on the force plates, and we're going to look at the difference between the two movements specifically, and now I'm going to go into a detailed breakdown of how we can apply that into a drill and understand how we can build that into our swing over time. So if we look at the swing we've just taken there, we can see how straight away the vertical force, so the peak that I create, is nearly 150% body weight. So in the previous swing, that was around about 130. So I've increased my vertical force percentage by about 20%, which is a good outcome for obviously more club and ball speed. But most importantly is we can see that really good drop off in the follow through. It's only mid follow throughs where we see a little bit more, and that's just my foot landing, whereas before I was almost staying in posture. We can see here I've got much more freedom through the hit, extension through the shot. And then most importantly, as we can see, when I move mid backswing was shifted, and by the time I get to top of backswing, I've already started to shift earlier into my lead side. As a result, I'm more recentered, and then I'm able to push more out the ball of that lead foot, and you can see where that blue dot is not moving to the outside of the foot anywhere near as much, and more importantly is we've got over 90% of pressure through impact with the ball on my lead side. So that's going to help compress the ball obviously much more effectively, giving more ball speed. When we compare that with the one where I was struggling with ball speed, if we look at the difference there, we can see that total percentage of body weight, vertical force is much lower, and we can see through impact with the ball, I'm rolling onto the outside of my left foot, and I've only got max 84% of my pressure. And we can see obviously that yellow dot proves that when I get to top of backswing, I'm staying on my right side too late and not recentering. So just by changing how much I move my pressure earlier, by the time I get to the top of the backswing and create more vertical force, we can change ball speed. So let's have a look at how I can do that as a drill. So naturally there's lots of drills that we can do to improve the pressure shift, the timing, how it all works. Now one that I think can be quite useful, but specifically that I was focusing on from a feel and almost tapping into an old toolbox of mine to create more speed in the previous video is you're gonna need an alignment stick. You're gonna take one club and place it on the floor, and another club I ideally want to be a wedge, because to drill this in, we don't want to be performing at max speed with low loft. So all I'm going to ask you to do is place one of the club, or it could be another alignment stick, almost probably a foot next to the ball, but an angle that's probably not quite 45 degrees, but close to 45 degrees pointing to the right in relation to your target. You're then going to take your alignment rod and place this through your belt buckle, which you might see a million times online, but typically that would be very much focused around trying to rotate more. Now, I'm not saying we're not trying to rotate more with this move, but we're using the alignment rod as a visual in a different way. So if I was just to do this with one hand to begin with, so I'm not going to hit the ball, but obviously we talked about I wanted to get my pressure moving more to the left, that recentering move that we know is so important and shows up with the best ball strikers in the world, moving more to the left by the time I've got to the top of the backswing. If I get to the top of the backswing and my max pressure is still on the trail foot on that right side for me, or I'm still trying to load up, you can't recenter. You're too late. You're never going to get pressure back into the lead side early enough, which is going to then mean we're probably going to have some form of compensation. We do see the odd player, the very, very best might do this because they're so explosive and powerful, but it's not a pattern you tend to see by the best ball strikers. So if I load up, and I talked about feeling like almost my coccyx, my tailbone, was starting to point to target. Now, if I'm pointing that to target, look what's happened to the rod. I'm getting more of an angle here in essence. And what we need to do is, when we shift, we want to feel like we maintain that angle. So that's why this club can be quite good, and we can almost go straight over the top of it. So if I go there, so I've got my angle, I'm now going to feel like I'm really pushing into the left side and I'm maintaining my angle. Now, if we didn't push and we almost just stay on the back foot, that angle would start to be going here. So we'd actually start to get spin, which is where people get a bit confused with rotation and saying we're actually getting good rotation, but we're not getting any club head speed. And that's because you're not actually getting any lateral forces, and then you're not able to get your vertical forces properly. So if you're a rotational spinny player, that gives you a bit of a clue. So I'm using that drill, so I'm pushing into my lead side. Now from there, we've got that angle, and as the club starts to be coming down into its delivery position, we have to be, or I had to be, starting to create some vertical push, because I've maxed out my peak lateral, my sideways motion. Now I need to be creating that vertical to then be able to get the rotation, and that's obviously then what's going to get the clearance, if we will, of this move, and we shouldn't hit the stick because we've cleared out the way, and we can use that as a visual. So what I'm going to try, and just your stick placement, just try a few so you make sure it's the right position to not hit. So as I'm going to drill that, like I say, not much, not a long club, plenty of loft, and we're going to do this at slow speed, and I probably would almost imagine like you're trying to do a Tommy Fleetwood hold off to just give yourself a chance. So I'm going to take the club back. I'm going to feel like I'm starting to drift into that lead side, keeping the alignment stick at an angle. I'm in this position to exaggerate. Then from there, I'm going to try and turn hard and push out the ground. But I'm going to do that at 50% speed. And straight away, you can see how I'm fully pressured into my lead side. I've probably rolled onto the outside of my left foot a little bit there, so pay attention to that, because that might mean your laterals went on for too long and you didn't get enough push early. So I'm going to try and just focus on that same move, but pushing a little bit more vertical. There we go. So I'm not really worried about the golf ball, the strike, or anything like that at the moment, because I'm just trying to feel the movement. And it's just then starting to work in, can you get the awareness of where the pressure shift's happening, the alignment rod, and the direction of the push. So there I actually hit the rod, which tells me I've spun out. So my right hips, as I'm bringing the club down, my right hip's flared and driven out too much, rather than getting that lateral, keeping that angle. So as the club's coming down into delivery, you can see how I'd never hit the stick. Whereas if I was bringing it down and already starting to come out, I'm going to hit the stick. So it's a good feedback tool, depending on the type of mover you are. So I'm going to do one more. That felt really nice. So I've done that at 50%. I'm just going to now try and build that up to a faster speed. So the backswing is going to be a bit quicker. I've got to try and feel that lateral shift without sliding, and then that explosive push out the ground. A little bit thin, but actually as a move, good. And I've still got plenty of carry, plenty of ball speed. So, you know, even if the strike's not perfect, you can still learn a little bit from how you're delivering the club. So one more. So just by using an alignment stick and a club, another club on the ground, and where your mental focus needs to go on how you're rehearsing the body movement can play a big role into getting your pressure shift more effective, your lateral forces and your vertical forces working more efficiently at the right time, and then over time, working that in, you're going to increase your ball speed, your carry distances, and on paper, you should increase your dispersion accuracy, because there's going to be less manipulation with the face. So obviously that movement drill's specific to me because I know what I need to work on, and if you know what your limitation with certain ground forces, is that vertical, is that side to side, or is that rotational, and you need some better assistance on what ground force drills specifically to work on, you can use my online golf performance app here. That'll help you target your practice more effectively.